Hi, my name is Simon Marcotte. I'm President and CEO of Northern Superior. Northern Superior is especially focused on the Chibougamau gold camp, which is, we believe, the next big gold camp to emerge. We've been consolidating that camp in a way now that there's a total of about 12.5 million ounces of gold between us and IAMGold, and growing very rapidly.
Simon, nice to meet you. First time we've met or spoken, it might be worth people getting to know you. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Absolutely. I started my career in the financial world, doing institutional equity sales for CIBC Wood Gundy, which we turned into CIBC World Markets. Then I moved to Sprott Securities, the securities firm of famous Eric Sprott, which we transformed into Cormark Securities. And then back in 2010, I switched to the corporate side. Been involved into many companies and played some nice cycles. I've done a lot of battery materials, very, very successful with lithium companies. And now it's not worth any of my time to get involved into anything else than gold. I'm extremely bullish on gold, and that's why we're focused on it.
Fantastic. Well, I recognize some of the names of the people working with you. Victor Cantare, obviously chairman, and Michael Gentile. You got a big team, some big names there. But what are they all doing, and who's actually working on a daily basis?
We all are. Well, yeah. So Victor Cantore, you probably know him from Amex Exploration, the discovery of the Perron discovery in Quebec. Amex has been probably one of the, if not the most successful junior mining story in Canada over the past 10 years. We work very closely on a daily basis. Michael Gentile as well. Michael Gentile is the largest shareholder of Northern Superior and very, very involved. I mean, Michael and I, we text on WhatsApp until midnight every night. Michael is the largest shareholder of about 20 companies like this, but he's rarely on the board. So he's on the board of Northern Superior. I'll mention this, not only Michael is deeply involved financially, but so are the other insiders, including Victor Cantore and myself. The last financing that we did, $8 million, we took $1 million down personally. And now together we own 25% of the company. So we only need one coffee in the morning. Then we also have, you didn't mention, but we do have Eric Desaulniers that joined the board as well. So I don't know if you came across Eric. Eric, spectacular entrepreneur, founder, CEO of Nouveau Monde Graphite. So obviously that's not gold, but Nouveau Monde is about to build a mine in Quebec. So he is in the right circles politically with everyone in Quebec, so that can be very useful for us. But interestingly enough, before Eric found graphite and created Nouveau Monde Graphite, he was actually trying to buy one of the gold projects that we have in the camp. So he's very, very familiar with the camp.
Yeah, and well, interviewed him about 3 years ago. So maybe not of recent times, but yeah, they're doing some good things up there. Look, I think it's important for people to kind of understand what you're trying to do. You've got two assets, one in Quebec, one in Ontario. You're spinning one of those out in Ontario. Can you just let's just kind of, to be able to kind of park up OnGold very quickly. Can you tell us a bit about that, why it's spinning out, and what does that do for you?
Yeah. So so we were involved. We are involved in two provinces, right? Quebec and Ontario. But Quebec and Ontario are very close, yet very, very different jurisdiction to do business and mining. So we wanted to have a company with the Ontario assets, with a different team and its own capital. And also, let's keep in mind, right? A company our size, I mean, we're just shy of $100 million market cap. You can't do too many things at once. You end up losing focus. You end up diluting yourself too much. So the right thing to do was to split the company in two. So we created OnGold Resources, which would focus on Ontario. But to be clear, and that's a bit unusual, we did not, or at least have yet to, distribute the shares of OnGold. So OnGold is a newly publicly listed company. It's trading now. But we still own all of those shares on our balance sheet. So Northern Superior currently owns 62% of OnGold. I mean, obviously, it's a transition period. You can't have, a publicly listed company with one shareholder at 62%. I get that. But I also didn't want to distribute those shares too early and impact the stock price of a new listing. So it'll work itself out in different ways. For example, OnGold just recently teamed up with Agnico Eagle for the Monument Bay project. And now Agnico Eagle is a 15% shareholder of OnGold. And Monument Bay is quite exciting. I mean, you're looking at about total of about 3 million ounces at north of 1.2 gram a ton. So Monument Bay, you may remember Mega Precious. Mega Precious had Monument Bay, then Yamana acquired Mega Precious for Monument Bay, and then Agnico ended up buying the Canadian assets of Yamana. So Monument Bay was kind of on the back burner at Yamana, at Agnico, and didn't deserve to be on the back burner. So Agnico saw the team at OnGold as the right fit, and OnGold the right custodian for that asset. Because what we built at OnGold is really a different kind of company, really focused on social acceptability, relationship with local communities, and relationship with the First Nations, which is everything in Northern Ontario. It always comes down to social acceptability and the relationship with the local community. So we really built a different kind of company there, where the CEO, Kyle Stanfield, is someone who does specialize in relationship with local communities, and his understanding of the processes that these communities have to go through make it easier for us to as a company to progress. So OnGold now is advancing the Monument Bay project, and it also has the TPK project, which was, interestingly enough, the flagship project of Northern Superior as a whole before. So TPK is now completely into OnGold, and TPK is heck of a project. I mean, TPK is a type of project that once you hear about it, you can't forget about it. It is the largest gold and till anomaly in North America, and frankly, potentially the world. And one drill hole that came out of this, 25 grams over 13 meters. There's a famous boulder on this property of 727 grams a ton gold. So it could be a massive discovery in the making. So we have that all into OnGold right now.
Okay, a few things to digest there. Let me start with the first thing. Obviously, the management and board are very, very different. This isn't just a case of the same management team from Northern Superior just flipping out a project and putting themselves on the board. There's a serious spin out. Again, explain why that's important for you, not just because of the experience in terms of dealing with kind of First Nations issues, but what it's going to do for the management of that company and its chance to actually do something.
Yeah, so we really built a team that is appropriate for what needs to be done to create value in Ontario, right? So Kyle Stanfield is the guy who permitted Rainy River, he permitted Magino, he permitted Musselwhite. So that's the right kind of expertise that you need to advance things in Ontario and create value with assets in Ontario. We also have the chairman of OnGold, who is Mr. John Kim Bell. Mr. Bell is actually from Quebec originally, First Nation background, grew up on south of the border. A very colorful individual, actually, a very successful person, and he was actually from the arts earlier, where he was a conductor at the orchestra, became a conductor on Broadway, but then joined the corporate world and ended up dealing with First Nation affairs for companies like Hatch, Glencore, I can think of, and others. And again, we brought in a lot of high-profile, directors to surround them. And the idea is not to stop there with OnGold, because with a team like this, and I think the fact that Agnico saw the opportunity to team up with this team for Monument Bay, so we see an opportunity to unlock value into many other assets in Northern Ontario. So it's a new company OnGold, but we have great expectations.
Okay, and with regards to non-distribution of the shares yet, look, it's been a tough market out there. Not a lot of IPOs, and there's lots of fun and games played in this space. So, talk about, if you don't mind getting us a bit of detail about what are you trying to protect and who are you trying to protect? Are you trying to protect Northern Superior shareholders? Is this about the OnGold shareholders, and what does this stop the market doing in terms of being able to maybe manipulate how it affects any of those shareholders?
Yeah, it is to protect everybody, right? And so because OnGold, it's been trading for a bit less than a year now. Liquidity is picking up a little bit, but it's still not overly liquid. And what happens, and I've seen these mistakes made time and time again, where a spin-off like that is created, and then the company takes those shares and then distribute them to the shareholders. But very often what happens is that the people that receive those shares will just have these shares that they don't know about pop up in their brokerage account, and very often they go, well, I don't really know this company, just sell it, right? And then it becomes a spiral down, and I've seen examples, without naming names, where the newly created company goes down by about 95%, and I've kind of observed that. So I didn't want to distribute those shares, at least not too soon. Now, that 62, Northern Superior was at 72% of OnGold. And after the transaction with Agnico, now, Agnico is at 15, and in that same transaction, Northern Superior got diluted, and we're now at 62%. So we'll see. I don't think we have a precise strategy. We'll see how things evolve. A distribution remains possible at some point. We can sell a block of shares. That would be a non-dilutive source of capital for Northern Superior. If OnGold makes other acquisitions, then obviously we get diluted. So ultimately, I'm sure that one way or another, we will fall below the 19.9 threshold that I would say.
Right. Okay, you've got Michael Gentile sitting on both boards. Obviously, he's going to a view how both companies should operate, and what they should be doing. I mean, OnGold's had a kind of tough start to this year, which is not good for you, not good for them. And obviously shouldn't comment on other companies, etc. But how do they kind of get out of this whole? What's your expectations of them for this year? And I know it's a separate board, separate team, etc. But you need them to work. So what have they got to do to win this year?
Yeah. So since the stock was very stable of OnGold, for the first period of time after we listed the company. Then the stock ran quite a bit when we announced the transaction for Monument Bay, and where Agnico became a shareholder. And unfortunately, the stock gave it all back. I can't really explain why, other than maybe a lack of news a little bit. There hasn't been a lot of news flow. But that's because now that we have the Monument Bay project, we need to start planning things ahead. So as the company goes to drill Monument Bay, our team so far has identified new targets and potential area to grow that resource. So that is definitely something that can turn around the stock. And then obviously TPK. So TPK. We want to do things right. We really want to have an inclusive approach with the local communities. The price is too big not to do things right at TPK. That is always what I say. So I think we have a window here this year to strike a cooperation agreement with the local communities and finally drill TPK. I think if we are ever going to be, just the announcement that we're going to drill TPK would move up the stock, no doubt about that. And if we do hit the jackpot, as we would expect, that can be a company maker, no doubt.
Right. Okay. And obviously with Agnico Eagle involved, it kind of sounds good, but they're involved in a lot of things, and the pace at which they expect to do things may not correlate with the company. So look, we will go separately away and look at what on the potential with OnGold is. Let's talk about what you want to focus on, which is obviously back in Quebec, Chibougamau camp. what have you got there? Tell us, start with that, and then we'll kind of talk about what are you going to do.
Yeah, so we're focused on the Chibougamau Gold Camp, which is a new camp. It is something that I think still flies a little bit under the radar, globally, because if you allow me to just put things in perspective a little bit, I mean, right now, like gold's moving up, the equity, gold equities are starting to move up. It really feels like the happy days are here again for the space. But we went through some very dark years, right, in the last 5 to 7 years. And even during those dark years, there was money to be made and capital did flow into camps that were emerging. And by that I mean the camp in Yukon, central and western Yukon, Guyana did very, very well, and Finland, right? Finland, where you have Agnico and, for example, and then Rupert and Orion benefited from that. So gold, to me, is always about camps that emerge, right? When a camp does emerge, it brings infrastructure to the area. Everybody benefits from it, and permitting gets easier and all of that. And if you look at the size of these camps, I mean, Yukon is much larger. But then, you look at Guyana, you're looking probably at about 20 million ounces. You look at Finland, altogether, Agnico, Rupert, Orion, you're looking at about 12 or 13 million ounces. Well, this is where the Chibougamau Gold Camp is, and that's new, right? So the Chibougamau Gold Camp really got a shot in the arm a few years ago with the discovery of the Nelligan project, which is now entirely owned by IAMGold. But the Chibougamau Gold Camp really has one specific and very attractive attribute, which is all of these deposits are very, very, very close to one another. So it's a perfect model for all of these deposits to potentially feed the same mill, right? And if we're able, so a hub and spoke, as we call it in the business, so if we're able to put it all together, if all these deposits can be together under one roof, it's under one company or under one joint venture or whatever the corporate structure, if it can be under one roof, then you can design an operation where all these different deposits will feed the same mill. Therefore, that would be the equivalent of having discovered a gigantic deposit. So by doing this consolidation, we increase the viability of these ounces and therefore the value of these ounces. So when I say there's now 12.4 million ounces between IAMGold and us, you're looking at the Nelligan project and Monster Lake that IAMGold has, and then we have everything else: Philibert, Lac Surprise, Croteau, and Chevrier. So all these deposits can feed the same mill. The problem was that if you go back a bit more than 2 years ago, all of these deposits were owned by a total of 6 different companies. So obviously, you can't build 6 different mills, and advance the camp like this. So we took a leadership role, and we took opportunity of those dark days of mining that I was referring to consolidate the camp. And now all of these deposits, all of these ounces, are owned either by IAMGold or by us, Northern Superior. And now the camp is really, really gaining speed, because I don't know how familiar you are with IAMGold, but IAMGold now is doing spectacular. Their Côté Lake project is now a mine. I'm not going to say it's on cruise control yet, but it's getting close to that. I mean, now IAMGold, since the new CEO came on board, Mr. Renaud Adam, really has become, the company that can't seem to be doing anything wrong. But if you go back a few years, they went through some rocky years before Renaud came on board. So they couldn't afford to do anything else than to be laser focused on the Côté Lake project in Ontario. So Chibougamau was kind of on the back burner because of that, right? But now it's night and day. I mean, IAMGold now has completely or almost completely de-risked the Côté Lake project, which is now a mine. and now they're starting to focus a lot more on their next stage of development, which is the Chibougamau gold camp. And now they're starting to spend a lot more, resources, capital, and attention to those assets.
Okay, let me be really clear with what you mean by leading the consolidation of the Shabogamo gold camp, right? You got IAMGold with their balance sheet, and as you said, you're sub $100 million company. How closely are you working with them? Is this are they on board with what you're trying to do, and how does it benefit you financially down the line?
Yeah. So yeah, of course. I mean, we're very friendly neighbors, as you can imagine. So first, to take a step back, you meant what do you mean by we took a leadership role? So Northern Superior made the acquisition of Royal Fox Gold, which had the Philibert project. And also Northern Superior acquired Genesis Metals, which had the Chevrier project. We also bought a few private things along the way. And those assets really are very important for the camp. And the camp now is at 12.4 million ounces between those two companies, us and IAMGold. And that's going to grow in size quite a bit. I mean, I think we're going to fly by 15 million ounces as a camp in no time.
But you can, sorry, interrupt, Simon. I'm trying to wrap my head around what this consolidation partnership look like. Is there a kind of formal partnership? Because most of those ounces seem to be with IAMGold. And to come back to that, I'm trying to understand, what does it do? What does this partnership, if there is one, or this consolidation do for you?
So there's a few ways. So yeah, so out of the 12 million ounces, to put things simple, IAMGold really has 8.5, and we have about 3.5 or almost 4 million ounces. But these assets are worth more together than separated, and the key reason why is the camp has the size now. It's going to get bigger, but it has the size. Now the camp is at the point where, to create value, it needs to optimize itself. And if you look at this type of project, so Nelligan is clearly a large tonnage operation, a bulk tonnage operation, as we call it. So not dissimilar to exactly the type of mine that they built, that IAMGold built in Ontario just recently. And when you look at these things, I mean, those things are big CapEx projects. And what will make or break these projects is the payback period. And therefore, the cash flow of the first few years, call it year 1 to 5, are absolutely paramount. So that's really where we see a potential by combining all of these assets and finally put them all together to go from 6 companies to 1. Will really help economically, because like if we take our project Philibert, for example, Philibert is only 9 kilometers away from Nelligan of IAMGold, and so if you put a mill in between, that's only 5 kilometers of trucking distance, and in mining 5 kilometers is absolutely nothing, right? A pit itself is 3 kilometers wide, but the grade of Philibert is quite a bit higher than the grade at Nelligan. So if you start by mining Philibert before you mine Nelligan, and you feed that to the same mill, you will drop the payback period significantly. Our metallurgy at Philibert is also very good. Recovery around 95%. So clearly that is, you get more gold per ton of rock that you mine and process. And again, that's another reason why further consolidation can help optimize the camp and lower the payback period. Now, there's a few ways how this could happen. I mean, I think there's so much value to create into this camp by wrapping it all together that it will happen one way or another. Obviously, IAMGold could acquire Northern Superior, right? This is an obvious way of doing it. But it's not the only way, and maybe not even the best way. If you look at a camp of the size I'm talking about, of 12 going to 15 and then more million ounces, if you know of another camp of this size that is not currently either owned or controlled by one of the senior gold producers globally, let me know because I can't think of one. So this is an amazing opportunity for anyone, any of those large gold producers to walk into the camp. And one easy way to make that happen would be for anybody else, any large companies without naming names, you could buy Northern Superior and then do a joint venture with IAMGold for the whole camp. And the reason I say that this is probably a more likely scenario comes from a research note, for example, of National Bank that wrote that a few months ago. So, and National Bank is not any brokerage shop. National Bank was the main advisor to IAMGold, and they raised $300 million US for IAMGold to allow them to buy back the 10% from Sumitomo. And the analysts at National Bank published that IAMGold could welcome a joint venture partner for the camp. And I think that makes sense because, like we just discussed, IAMGold is doing great now, can't seem to be doing anything wrong, but they went through some rocky years. And it wouldn't surprise me if the shareholders of IAMGold would like to enjoy a few years of high free cash flow and potentially dividend before they see IAMGold jump into the next big project and big investment. But also, IAMGold needs a growth pipeline. A public company cannot have no growth. And clearly, they've stated the growth of IAMGold is Chibougamau. So a good halfway situation to get kind of the best of both worlds, to have the growth and to limit the capex exposure would be to find a way to joint venture the entire camp.
Right. Okay. So waiting is never a good strategy. So I'm trying to work out which bits you can control. So conversations with IAMGold are possible. You get slightly higher grade, 20-25% higher grade, good recovery rates will definitely help. But what IAMGold's objectives are and waiting around to find out is not a good strategy. So are there conversations happening now about what their intent is, or is this just some kind of reserve hope for adding reserve numbers to their balance sheet to kind of make sure the institutional boys and girls are happy? And how likely is it? And what's your contribution in terms of having another party come in and take you both out or partner with you? And how do you benefit? How do your shareholders benefit? Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of unknowns at the moment. So how do you shape that?
Yeah, I mean, so first, before I dive into that, we're not just waiting around right now, right? We're conducting aggressive drilling campaigns at the moment. So we see our Philibert asset as the asset that is really the key to the camp. It is the starter pit of the whole camp, and therefore we see that's the asset that brings the most value to the camp. So I mean, we're just in the middle of a 20,000 meter drilling campaign at Philibert. We just started to put out some results and some very good one at that. So for example, so we have 2 million ounces now at Philibert at 1.1 gram. And I'll point out that this can be optimized quite a bit, right? So if you move up, I don't want to get too technical here, but if you move up the cutoff grade just a tiny bit from 0.35 to 0.5 at Philibert, our grade goes from 1.1 gram to more than 1.3. And we only lose about 10% of the ounces, which speaks a lot to the quality of those ounces. That may not sound like a lot, to go from 1.1 to 1.3, but 1.3 is 40% higher than the grade at Nelligan. So for every ton of rock that you mine and process, you get 40% more gold, right? So it's a massive difference. So we got those 2 million ounces at Philibert, and that is contained within a pit of about 3 kilometers long. And now we've been extending that mineralization. So not long ago, we came up with a big hit, 26 meters at 2.6 gram, 200 meters east of the pit. Now we just announced that we have another nice hit, 800 meters east of the pit. And we're getting some very nice high grade at the bottom of the pit as well. So clearly the mineralization at Philibert continues. So we're going to keep on drilling that to make Philibert larger. So that is what we're doing on a day-to-day basis right now, is to make all of our assets larger, because we've got quite a bit of upside, and we're building a lot of ounces. Now, as far as all these discussions, obviously, I'm not going to open my kimono on all these discussions, but clearly, we're talking to everybody that is involved in the camp or would like to get involved in the camp. As you know, M&A has been ramping up everywhere, but especially in jurisdiction like Canada and Quebec. So people care about this camp a big deal. It's a matter of time before a major controls it, I believe.
Okay, so this is not a case of us hoping that you can find enough ounces to try and build a mill yourselves. This is clearly a collaborative exercise, as you say, consolidation exercise to kind of suit everyone. So there's no, small company trying to talk a big game. This is a kind of consortium type approach.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It makes too much sense to wrap up all together somehow, not to do it. So I'm pretty confident that it will end up on all of it under one roof. If for one reason or another it doesn't happen, well, our projects can definitely be turned into standalone projects as well, especially with the price of gold that's moving up and up and up. Sometimes small is beautiful, right? So we could plan to build a smaller mill ourselves for one of our projects. Absolutely, it is in the cards. But I am a strong believer that a camp like this doesn't come around very often. So
Okay.
it will get wrapped up.
Are there other mills in the district which you can DSO to, or is that not?
Yes, but they're too
option?
small. They're historical mill that were done especially for copper, that do have a bit of flotation or for higher grade materials. So this area now has really transformed itself into a bulk tonnage operation, and for something like that there is no mill. So infrastructure needs to be brought in, but and by that I mean a mill. I mean there's roads, there's power, there's everything you need. There's labor. But a mill will ultimately need to be brought to the area.
Okay, I like the business plan. Talk to me about what happens this year. What are we looking out to see from you guys?
Yeah, so a lot more drilling results to come, right? And then we have some obviously compilation to do, probably some more met work as well, resource publication to come down the road as well. Obviously at Philibert, but other projects as well. I wouldn't. I think to expect further M&A in the camp, one way or another. I mean, so far we have been the hunter, but we could obviously become the hunted. So I would definitely expect more M&A in the camp this year and next. And if we are still around, then ideally, I'd like to bring in a dance partner now, to bring a strategic investor. By that I mean ideally a mining company to fund our next year drilling program. But right now, as it is, we still have an enormous amount of core to log and to review and send to the lab and compile the data.
Right. Okay. So in terms of the consolidation, the collaboration, the district, I get it. All makes sense. Looking a little bit broader into the market, we're seeing lots of new business models arriving. You described maybe looking at some kind of dance partner, industry player. And do you think that's the way that a lot of the exploration companies are going to have to view this market now going forward to survive initially, but also to have a chance of growing and driving that share price?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the secret of doing it, right? Because if you were not able to bring strategic investors over the past few years, your equity went down at that spiral. But that is actually changing quite fast now. And that's interesting because early in my career, we're diverting a little bit here, but early in my career, I remember we were bringing Australian companies to list in Canada so that they could access capital. And now the world went completely upside down, and it is Canadian companies that were going to Australia to get financed, because Australia really put their game together, and they have super annuity fund over there that invest into the space, and because they're there to support the companies, then the retail investors are not worried about having to finance the company themselves ongoingly. So access to capital now is very good in Australia. And that has created, over the past few years, a huge gap of valuation between the Australian companies and the Canadian listed companies. And that's why now you're starting to see the Australian fund, moving to Canada. I mean, the Australians came at the right time in Quebec for iron ore, for example, and did a killing. The Australians came in Quebec for lithium at the right time and made an absolute fortune. And now you're starting to see the Australians come to Canada and Quebec in gold and copper, which I find interesting. But the Canadian market is finally waking up. And it's probably because of the Trump tariff war that makes the news every day in Quebec, that I think investors are now thinking, wait a second here. We may actually be entering soon a period, or even a prolonged period, of negative real rates, which would get gold to absolutely catapult and be good for equity. But what matters is that generalist fund managers are now investing in the space, and that has just changed over the last few weeks. So Canadian companies now that could only get funded with strategics and high net worth investors, now Canadian companies can get funded any day of the week. We're turning down financing offers. So as that capital comes in, the valuation gap between the Australian companies and the Canadian companies is starting to close.
Yeah, no, for sure, and it's about time as well. So it's very lively market out there if you've got a great story, and gold's the commodity to be in for sure. Look, Simon, I appreciate your time today. Nice introduction to the story. So, are there any decent iron ore companies in Canada?
My brother is with Champion, so I can't definitely. Definitely, Champion Iron Ore would be the name you want to own.
Inside joke, folks. Okay, appreciate your time today. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks for.